Welcome back, guys. I'm standing here with White Lotus 80K for Lion Gaming. Congratulations on your victory just then. And I want to touch on something that I've been told, which is I know Vayne is your favorite champion in League of Legends, but when you can't play Vayne, you love to go to Tristana, you love to get your hands on Kog'Maw, which are very popular in the world's meta at the moment. You've played both those champions today. How comfortable are you on these picks? Because you seem to be doing really well.
Ok, agarro. Bueno, el tema de la meta, por suerte, como que ahora se están jugando muchos hipercarries, hay mucha variedad de hipercarries, con lo que me siento muy cómodo, la verdad. Así que, por suerte, el meta creo que nos favorece porque tendemos a hacer bastantes teamfights y con hipercarries en late game, así que está bastante bueno.
We actually love how the meta is going too, because I love to play that hyper carry champions, and it's really good for us because we like to get into fights, and actually helps a lot to having these champions on the meta.
Well, that's really great to hear, especially because your first match against Team WE, you guys were fighting non-stop. And before 35 minutes, you were winning every single team fight against a team that's the most hyped up coming into play-ins, and even the most hyped up player being Mystic, your direct opponent, said that that was a very difficult game. How do you feel in that match against Team WE?
Contra WE, la verdad, como que sabíamos que iba a ser un juego muy difícil, porque son un equipo muy muy bueno y sobre todo la botlane como que tenía mucho interés en cómo iba a ser porque respeto muchísimo a Mystic, me parece un jugador increíble. Así que por suerte se nos dio el early con los champions que teníamos, sacamos los champions que queríamos, con el combo pudimos sacar un par de kills early y así como que las teamfights se nos estaban haciendo un poco más fáciles, pero lamentablemente por cuestiones de nervio, no sé, no tomamos las mejores decisiones y no pudimos cerrar el juego.
We know that it was going to be a really difficult game. We team is one of the best teams in the tournament, and actually I was really curious about how the bot lane was going to be because I really admire and respect Mystic. And the thing is, at the mid game we were start winning. It was great to have the first 2 kills with Kog'Maw, but we kind of missed it in some callings at the mid game, and that's why we lost it.
But you still put up a fantastic fight against Team WE, and you carried on to have a very one-sided performance against Gambit here today. Next up, you're going to face off, you're going to get the rematch against Team WE again, you're going to go up against Gambit. How confident are you going into day number 2 of the play-in stage?
Sabemos que el juego de WE va a ser bastante difícil, así que, pero estamos muy confiados en que podemos, aunque sea, sacar segundo de grupo. Yo creo que somos mejor equipo que Gambit, pero aún así, si sacamos un buen juego, como que le vamos a poder sacar una partida a WE.
We know that it's going to be a difficult group. Actually, we know that we are better than Gambit, and we are confident on it. And actually, we're hoping to actually take one game from WE.
Well, congratulations on your win today. Best of luck throughout the rest of the group stage. That wraps up Group A for today. We're going to send it back to you guys to start Group B.
Thank you, Fish, and hello, everyone. I'm Max Atlas Anderson, joined by my sworn Twitter rival, because that's how we do it in Oceania, Indiana Frosker Black. How are you doing? Welcome to the world stage once again.
I know, Max. It was a long flight, but we made it. Super happy to be here and incredibly excited to be casting Cloud9 versus Direwolves.
Exactly right. The Wolves and Raptors are fed for our next game. Direwolves versus Cloud9. And starting on the blue side for Game 4, it is going to be those Direwolves. Chippies on the top side of the map. Schönfire with the fiery language from the jungle. Fantix, the perfect mid laner. Your boy King as AD carry, and Destiny as support.
And the hometown heroes for NA on the other side, it is going to be Cloud9. That is going to be Impact up into the top lane, Contracts in the jungle, Jinsen in mid lane, Sneaky and Smoothie taking up ADC and support.
And that coach will, of course, be Reaped. And as if the stakes of Worlds wasn't high enough, both teams have some Twitter banter to back up coming into today's game. Chippies, man, he was going off to start things for this matchup.
Exactly. I mean, as soon as they saw the group draw show, Chippy sent out a tweet, classic Aussie banter fashion. It was just like, Impact, I'm going to destroy you. I'm your new rival. Pay attention to me. And Impact was pretty quick on the return there, like, hello, who are you? It's nice to meet you.
Yeah, exactly right. It's like, who even is this guy? But Chippies is definitely a confidence player. Schönfire at the same time. We saw him in the opening video here for Worlds to start the play-ins. And yeah, he's got some fighting words. He's not quite up to taking on WE. He's in a different group, so he's going to have to try really, really hard if they they do want to get there.
And they're really going to need to rely on a lot of that confidence. After the form that Cloud9 had earlier today, this is a tough matchup. Cloud9 looking like the forefront favorites for the group right now. They absolutely dominated their match earlier on this evening. So it's just, go 2-0. It's easy. Look at the Direwolves. Walk in the park, as Jensen would say.
Well, the question is, though, is the competition actually going to change here? Because Direwolves are a very different team in comparison to that of Team 1. Because one, a lot of young players, even the coach, only 21. Whereas we've got some really seasoned veterans coming over from OCE. Fantix have been playing since Season 1, things like that. And that is a matchup that I actually want to focus on. Because Jensen, you need to try and keep him down if you're his opponent in the mid lane.
And which means it's more about the 2v2, the jungle and the mid lane, and trying to control Jensen. So it's Jensen and Contracts versus Schernfire and the perfection Fantix, the mid laner. Now, we do have to take a moment and simply celebrate that Oceania finally made it, Atlas. We're finally on the world stage and have this opportunity to compete in play-ins and look towards those groups. And the Direwolves had made no questions about this. They are very confident. And like I said, they're going to need that confidence after the performance that Cloud9 showed.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that it is the Direwolves that are here in the first place, because a lot of people, if you've heard about Oceania, you've heard about the Chiefs. The Chiefs have been that dominant team. However, this year, a very different story. Back-to-back victories, dominant splits as well for the Direwolves. They really have solidified themselves as the top team in Oceania, and now they have to really put their money where their mouth is, because their mouth is doing a lot of talking for Oscar, and we had a little bit of an embarrassment last time. We were trying to get into MSI, didn't quite work. Schernfire very, very confident. Now we still have the confidence. If you've read any of the interviews that the Direwolves have done, they're still very confident. However, that has been tempered just a little bit. It's not blind faith that they're going to be able to make it to the final against SKT, theoretically. Like, this is a team that knows that they need to take things one step at a time, and I really hope that that's their mindset, especially heading into this incredibly difficult game.
Yeah, and now it's about establishing kind of what are the win conditions. Like, how do Direwolves win if they win against Cloud9? And it starts in their lane phase. They have incredibly dominant solo laners, Chippies in the top lane, Fantix in the mid lane, and a lot of the ability for Direwolves to command and just dominate the OPL was just the fact that Chippies and Fantix were left on their own, and Surefire can put all of his attention into either counter jungling the enemy jungler or camping for his bot lane and getting King going down there. Now, on the other side, in Cloud9, they've kind of had, a bit more of an inconsistent split, but since their inauguration, they've made every single world championship, which is nothing to see. Is that Sneaky, of course, the only player that has appeared in every single one of those, and they're more about, setting up these objectives and being very smart. I think their vision and their setup game is actually incredibly impressive. It's just the execution that they need to fine-tune just a little bit.
Well, we are into champion select here, and we'll see whether Direwolves can do it. Of course, they're going to be starting on the blue side, and this sometimes, in other metas has been certainly a good side for any team to be on, but Cloud9 have been dominant on the red side of the map. In fact, over their last couple of best of fives, it's been red side that's picked up the majority of the wins, but we've got bans coming through thick and fast. Maokai, Shen, and Orianna taken away from C9, and there is the Kalista, the Rakan, and the Jace being taken away from the Direwolves. But that's a very quick Sejuani lock-in. And of course, Schernfire is going to be the one to fire off those picks as quickly as possible.
But the thing is that Schernfire is really known as kind of being a hunting or a tracking jungler. Yes, he can be a bit farm-heavy, but he likes to be on more proactive, ganking-oriented picks. If Direwolves can hold you in a lane phase and then just let Schernfire kind of do his pathing thing around him, that's where they find a lot of success. Now, Sejuani can do that in instances, but she's also, depending on the matchup, pretty brittle and frail. If you get into her phase, if you interrupt her in the early game, she can stall out a bit. So we'll see what the cross matchup is in the hands of Contracts, but Contracts is a very high tempo jungler. If he gets those picks that he likes, he can disrupt Schernfire.
And speaking of picks that he likes, Jarvan being considered right now, things like the Rek'Sai though, that he's been playing a lot, does like that warrior enchant into the Black Cleaver, which I personally, as an LCK commentator, do not see very, very much. But look at this, Direwolves, they're not waiting at all. That Cho'Gath and Corki lock-in came in extraordinarily quickly, but we do need to go back to the Xayah pickup because Sneaky has been prioritizing that over things like the coveted Tristana. And there's Jensen locking away the Galio, and again, I'm not used to it going towards the top side of the map, but that is not a Jensen champion.
Yeah, and there's a lot of flex picks. That's the first thing that really stands out to me about Cloud9's draft. The fact that, yes, we predict that might go into the jungle in terms of the Jarvan, but there's the opportunity that's mid or top Galio, that's top or jungle Jarvan. It could even be a support Galio for all we know. So right now, Cloud9 haven't given away any of their strategy, but Direwolves don't really seem to care about that because of how fast and furious they are locking in these champions. They seem to know exactly what they want.
Well, spoiler alert, I think that is going top lane. Sorry, it just doesn't feel like a Jensen pick, but Fantix is very comfortable on this Corki. We know him as a player that has gone back a very, very long time. However, the Corki in recent memory has certainly been one of those power picks for him, and also quite safe, unless Jensen is going to pick something like a Cassiopeia, which we haven't seen so far. Seen her on the ban list, not necessarily in that mid lane, and with her added scaling, maybe people just don't feel that she has enough early game power just yet. But the bans are coming in, and it's 80 carry focus on King as Tristana and Kog'Maw are removed, and bottom lane still getting a look at as Smoothie's. He certainly deserves the respect for the Hook champions, and both of them are gone.
I mean, Smoothie's a massive playmaker there. If anything really gets started for Cloud9 early, it's usually in the tandem between Contracts and Smoothie and how these two hook up. So giving respect, taking away those heavy Hook champions makes a lot of sense. Now, putting Smoothie on something like this, yeah, it's going to empower Sneaky, but it's not necessarily the big playmaker that I want to see Smoothie grab a hold of.
And the Janna is going to be locked in immediately after these bans go through, so Smoothie going to be definitely stepping away from that proactive role and heading straight into probably one of the most passive options that you can go towards. But Direwolves are looking at that particular option themselves. It's Caitlyn Karma to be locked away, and that is a lot of lane pushing power. And I like this because Piltover Peacemaker, of course, nerfed a little bit just recently, so not going to be able to clear out those waves as efficiently. Therefore, you just pick up the Karma to augment that a little bit themselves, as Impact is considering a Gangplank, but I don't think that's going to happen. There's a different G champion that certainly feels like more of an Impact move.
Ooh.
Oh, no, it's not. It's going to be the Jarvan 4 on the top side of the map, and Contract's going to be picking up that Nidalee, so theoretically we could have double Ardent Senses if we want them, but there is only 180 carry in this particular composition, and I told a lie. Froscarin, that is going to be the Galio in the mid lane.
It's okay, Atlas. This is why you're the play-by-play caster. Let me take it from here.
Well, I'll just step out of the dumpster for a moment, if that's okay.
You did say the big key word, though, which was Ardent Sensor, and that's what Cloud9's composition is really built about. When Cloud9 faced CLG in the regional qualifier final, they did play a very similar composition to this, and it was the Ardent Sensor of Fiends build coming out of Nidalee. In tandem with the Janna, it's putting all of that pressure and all of that carry responsibility on Sneaky's shoulders, and he went big in that series, so he can do the same thing in this one. Now, on the other side of that, it's super comfort across the board. You already mentioned Fantix Corki, comfortable there, but it's also King's Caitlyn. That is one of his big champions.
Oh,
and yes, she's seen repeated nerf after nerf, but in tandem with Karma, they're going to have so much control over that lane. And again, Surenfire, how does he plug into that bot lane? His jungle proximity is huge down there, and he has so many options to play around their pressure pivot point.
The really interesting thing about this is the fact that Chippies is not necessarily playing his carries towards the top side. We know him for things like Jax, things like Lucian that he didn't actually lose on. I know the sample size is only 2 games in the last split. However, still 100% is 100%. And Cho'Gath, a very different beast. Yes, you can bite people for a heck of a lot of damage, but for all intents and purposes, that guy is a tank. And Impact is going to have a little bit more control up there with the added damage that he has, especially early on that Jarvan. So Chippy's going to have to be very careful against a man that has been extraordinarily dominant. So as we hit Summoner's Rift, Direwolves, their normal playstyle may actually be hindered by what C9 have put together.
And again, it's the reliance on having strong laners. The Direwolves very rarely play from behind. Out of their 29 games, they were only behind in 9 of them, so they don't have a lot of experience. And Cloud9, they've been moving.
So you're saying their weakness is winning too much? Is that what you're saying?
They're just too good now.
But yeah, no, that certainly can be a problem, especially when Direwolves are such a snowbally team as well. They win fast, or they don't win. That's sort of how it works. So
Live fast, die young.
yeah, that's basically it.
Sounds like the OPL motto.
But that is going to be difficult with something like Sejuani in the jungle, which doesn't have a lot of pressure. Does suit Surenfire because he doesn't like helping very many people in the early game. The dude likes to get around the jungle, farm things up, and then be that dominant force and try and disrupt the enemy and play aggressively rather than gank for his lanes. His jungle proximity mid and top is
Abysmal.
yeah, terrifyingly low.
It's very skewed towards this bottom lane, I think is the fair way to say it, which again...
That's a much better way of saying it, Ross. Thank you.
We got a thesaurus on hand. Which is, again, why I put so much, a magnifying glass on Contracts. I know that, Jensen's the big talking point of Cloud9. He is kind of the heart and soul of the team. Really, everything plugs into him. But it's about how Smoothie and Contracts and the sacrifices that they make to really set Jensen up for success. Placing deep vision, hanging around his lane, ensuring that he gets the pressure that he needs to get the backs that he wants so he can take advantage of how talented of a player he really is.
Well, Impact is being quite frustrating here as we start up first camps for the junglers. Surenfire will, of course, have a smite if he wants to take down this blue buff, and Impact does get that late ward down And we'll head towards this lane. Chippy's having to take the long way around because he doesn't want to tussle with the Jarvan.
Could mean that he gets zoned off a lot of this experience. We'll see how aggressive that impact's actually going to be. And yeah, just...
Yeah, Vorpal Spike's actually feeling pretty satisfying there for Chippy as he
Super
grabs a couple
fun.
of them.
That's the thing about Cho'Gath, though, is, you know, when he wants to farm, he has to push the lane. It does leave him exposed. And if you look at all of the lane options that Contracts has to gank, top lane does look pretty delicious early on because you do have the kill pressure and the CC that Jarvan's going to offer. That said, Contracts, I feel like he's just going to spend a lot of his time trying to hunt or play around Sejuani.
It doesn't feel like Nidalee is that sort of ganking jungler, though, that wants to get into the enemy jungle and really mess him up. And hunting Sejuani's is certainly something a lot of junglers have figured out is a great idea, just because she doesn't necessarily have all that power. In the early game, he is just looking to steal away this Gromp, though. He's miles and miles away from Shern at this particular stage. So we'll see where he goes. Looks like he's considering the Scuttle Crab.
Does he just taunt the red buff?
I hope so. It seems like a Shernfire thing to do.
It definitely does. But so far, it's been a pretty calm game. It was Sneaky and Smoothie ending up late because they did leash for Contracts there, whereas Karma and Caitlyn got to walk directly into the lane. So they should have control and push priority down there. And I'm curious how Shernfire is going to translate that into grabbing deep vision on Contracts jungle. Again, he needs to get eyes on this guy so he can stay away from him until Sejuani really feels strong in mid-game.
And as we look down towards the bottom side, no Relic Shield shenanigans being picked up by any of these AD carries. It's going to be the swords and shields as King utilizing that extra range, meaning that he can pick up that Doran's Blade and be a little bit more comfortable. But Sneaky farming out quite nicely, despite the fact that the shove certainly going in favor of the Direwolves, as you might expect with the amount of push pressure that you have with Karma and Caitlyn.
And so far, you know, Shernfire set them up for success in the bottom lane, King and Destiny, by grabbing an early Scuttle Crab, by placing Deep Vision down there so they can afford to be that over-aggressive and that extended forward, trying to punish the tower, trying to punish the Janna lane. I'm just curious if it's going to remain consistent like that, because if King and Destiny want to play that far forward, yeah, it's not a great lane to gank, but Contracts could just peek his head down there.
As we have a peek into the mid lane, you mentioned Jensen, certainly the player that C9 like to play around. Fantix has had basically the highest CSD numbers since he started playing professional League of Legends in Oceania. So still, he's farming out great, but the Justice Punch is going to come in, and he's going to get taunted up. Spear lands from Contracts, jumps forward. There's the flash to follow for the first blood. And Contracts, you'd expect him to be in the mid lane, but it's not always successful ganks that come out. Fantix, that's a problem to start things off for the Direwolves.
Yeah, and Fantix is just trying to lessen the bleeding right now, pulling the creep wave over to the side, trying to get at least a nice freeze for Fantix, or holding the wave in a good spot for him. He does have teleport, so there he comes. He's not going to lose too much in terms of the CS on the wave, but losing first blood to Contracts is certainly going to hurt.
That's a big problem. Jensen going to teleport back in as well, has his catalyst, so the dueling potential for this Galio feels a little bit infinite from now on. And this means that it's basically a nullified matchup anyway when it's Corki versus Galio. He's going to farm things. Corki's going to try and impact the lane, but really you're a Galio. You tend to shrug when it comes to a lot of that pressure.
But it does get that much easier to try to punish Fantix because he doesn't have his flash. Yes, he has his Valkyrie, but Contracts showed that it doesn't necessarily matter there. Did also burn his own flash in return, however, as Jensen, actually, getting pretty aggro.
Yeah, misses the punch, but gets the passive.
It's about
so
the thought.
That's going to be fine. As we have a look at this gank, it was pretty picture perfect from the mid and jungle from C9.
And that's the thing, you know, we know that C9 are going to be about Jensen in that mid lane. They offer him so much. And I asked the question, you know, what is Contracts or Smoothie setting up and sacrificing him? Smoothie's probably going to be locked down because he's John. He's on babysitting duty for Sneaky. But Contracts can spend all day around that mid lane or even ganking the mid lane.
Yeah, well, good news for Direwolves fans is the fact that it hasn't affected farm too much. Fantix having a better time than at least Team 1 did.
Big
There's
wave
the Cataclysm, yeah, Impact going aggressive onto Chippies. He actually can't get out of here. But thankfully not a lot of damage as the spear is gonna land! That's gonna finish him off. Meanwhile, on the bottom side, King able to pick up a kill against the flow of what has been C9 domination. But man, both solo lanes being taken down, and we mentioned this is so key for the Direwolves win condition.
But it's usually not in this lane. That's the thing. They are so reliant on Chippy's ability to play a side lane, on Fantix having control of the side lanes himself. Now, in this composition, it's not necessarily about the Cho, but it would certainly help for the Corki. It's not usually King and Destiny
about to take this turret
that are getting these early kills. It's fine. Jarvan's got a steroid. Oh, but the creeps!
They're gonna die. There it is. Okay, so first turret going over to C9 as well, settling about a 2,000 gold lead for the North American squad.
But this is actually really important because yes, the towers are dropping really early, but why this is important for the Direwolves in particular is because they've really struggled to try to play cross-map reactive plays. We take another look at this. I guess it's not a solo kill. 2v1 in the top lane. That feels good.
It's one spear, I guess. You can call that partially a solo. Is just going to have a look at Smoothie being taken down on the bottom side as well. Oh my god, Destiny. That's a lot of damage.
Point blank.
Yeah. It's like we gotta respect the AD carry. That's the one doing all the damage. No. It's all about Destiny. Smacking them in the face. Of course, shot call out for the Direwolves as well. For those less familiar with this team, the man has played 3 roles professionally, I believe. AD carry, mid, and now support.
He's also been a coach.
He has.
He's certainly been around the scene as John is trying to hold on to this tower, but it should fall in this rotation. And as I was saying, Direwolves usually don't take structures this early. Now, they got the Karma Caitlyn matchup. Of course, they're going to have a super heavy pushing lane. This is to be expected. Not necessarily the 2v2 solo kill, but certainly the tower falling. You know, that's not on Sneaky or Smoothie. That's how that should play out. But when the Direwolves have an open map, when they need to start coordinating where they're rotating around or being in the correct lanes, understanding their win conditions on that open map, that's when they start to falter. They're really strong in isolated, lockdown lanes. So I'm really curious to see what they've learned over the course of their Korean boot camp, and if they can keep up with the setup of Cloud9.
Well, it seems like already their focus has changed because Chippy's falling down very, very low. C9 will be able to take this Cloud Drake to start things off. You can imagine Direwolves not too upset about that because Clouds just don't get all that much respect. I'm personally a big fan of Cloud Drake just because, you know, rotations are fun. I've spent a lot of time in Korea, but not exactly the most coveted, because Jensen's going to be handed over a blue buff as well. So theoretically, C9 coming out ahead with a lot of extra objectives. Direwolves not going to be too upset.
Here comes Shern, though. He's actually slipped in underneath this vision.
Yeah, Destiny's going to flash forward. They're looking for a kill onto Smoothie yet again, but that's a great Monsoon to get them out of the way. The disengaged Queen herself is going to once again reign supreme.
Yeah, compensating for the fact that he doesn't have his flash, but it doesn't really matter because he had his ultimate. So still drawing a lot of attention. Unfortunately, Direwolves move a lot of their pieces down bottom. They already lost the dragon. They've already taken the tower, so they don't really get anything other than the ultimate.
It does mean that C9 do have to get out of that lane. A lot of respect now for this Caitlyn, who is ahead by about 14 CS.
You say that, but Cloud9 actually funnel a ton of their side lane farm onto Sneaky, and you can actually see him creeping forward. But speaking of creeping, here comes Contracts.
Yep, and there it is. The heroic entrance going to come down as well, and despite the fact that that spear didn't land, Contracts is still going to hop over that wall and steal away the kill. That is 3-0 now for the Nidalee. That's 100% of the kills for Cloud9.
But this is a good counterplay from Direwolves to at least get some chip damage here. Now, C9 are setting up for a flanking maneuver, but Jensen probably doesn't want to take it without the ultimate.
Gunfire does at least land the Arctic Assault, but it's not too much of a worry here for C9 as there are no more creeps. King's just going a little bit aggressive in his movements at least. Can do so with the added Inspire Shield, giving him some movement speed and some protection.
But while this has been happening, Impact's still been left alone on that tower.
Yeah, and they pushed this one up, so a lot of farm is now going to go missing for Chippies. Chippies is not having a very good time. So if we go back to the Twitter banter, it's just bad news bears, really. I think Impact still doesn't really know who he is. He's like, oh, that's a glorified cannon creep. I'm going to take him down.
I was going to go for Bug, but Cannon Creep's probably pretty effective at this point.
No, that's very, very rude. Chippy's just been preyed upon. We saw this actually happen. Bruiser not having exactly the best time in the mid lane, and now it's a bit of a top focus. Oh, Fantix blocks the Justice Punch for the escape, and we do actually have the snare coming in. Jensen taking a lot of damage. King's here to try and augment as the Ignite's going to burn down, but Peacemaker's not going to be enough to lock down that kill. The ultimate's there for King, though. He probably should have started channeling that one. Just didn't have enough mana.
Maybe he also didn't have the confidence there. I mean, he led with a lot of his...
Do you really need to have confidence to press an R button when
No.
you're just safe in the middle lane?
But the thing is he like led with all of his abilities, so he thought he could like walk it down instead of relying on his team to
yeah.
just use the ultimate.
Oh, well, Jensen gonna go back and just pretend nothing happened as he teleports back into lane. Does mean that they're not necessarily going to have that teleport to move themselves around, but he will have that ultimate back up once again. And it's much like Shen, where you're not really too worried about just throwing your teleport around willy-nilly.
But I do want to point at this, because this is what I was kind of talking about a bit before. Sneaky's now gone from bottom towards the top side. You know, this is pretty standard at this point in the game, but I want people to focus on, as the game goes later and later, where Sneaky is actually placed on the map. For my domestic region in the LPL, a lot of the time the AD carry and the support would be in the mid lane, and the mid or the top laner would be taking care of those side lanes. But Cloud9 a lot of the time will funnel that farm onto their AD carry and use him as kind of not like defensive protecting, hoovering up the farm in the mid lane, but using him for his pushing power and his safety on champions like Xayah, like Kalista, like Tristana, a huge pick for Sneaky. And then make plays and claps around Jensen, who sits in the mid lane closest to everywhere that he can impact on the map.
Well, you have a look at how the game's going. It's still around that 2,000 gold lead, maybe a little bit more now, but otherwise, not too much of a problem. If you're a Direwolves fan, I know most of you at home are not. Spear is going to land onto Chippies, and this most certainly is a problem, as the heroic entrance is going to come down, and Jensen is finally going to pick up a kill for the Cloud9 squad, who have been relying on contracts to do that most of the time.
And that's what I'm talking about. You have Jensen in your mid lane, he's on the Galio. It means that he can, quickly pivot to top or bottom, whatever he wants. They just find a simple pick like that, followed up with the Galio CC, and finally Jensen's on the board and not just playing support for this team.
Yeah, and it's going to be Rift Herald to come out immediately afterwards as well. So getting the objectives, getting the kills, and I'm not even entirely sure why Chippies was there as well. I mean, we had Schönfire scoping things out. They knew that it was dangerous in that river.
But you can also kind of understand why Chippies probably felt safe. He is Shogoth, he is the tank. So kind of peeking his head around his mid lane, naturally punished, but I can understand why he was there.
Well, once again, 50 CS lead here for Impact. And I have to, to me, Impact has been one of the most impressive players on C9, especially during playoffs and, of course, the regional qualifier. He really has stepped up his game. The guy just seems to be able to get farm in any matchup or dominate the matchup entirely. And it's happening once again. It happened last time. It's happening now.
Yeah, he was, fairly inconsistent, had a bit of his slumps over the regular split, but certainly came back very hard on the end of the split. And what I really like is, you pointed out, his ability to absorb and kind of control losing matchups. And then when you do give him that opportunity to carry, that's like the real strength of Cloud9 to me. The fact that they can carry from every position and they don't always have to rely on Jensen.
Yeah. And that absorbing pressure is something that Chippies really needed to do towards the beginning of this game. Cho'Gath is very different to, the Jax that he loves, the Lucian that he loves, because that's going to be able to dish out that pressure, whereas Cho'Gath is about taking punishment for as long as he can.
And it's really about shifting responsibility. Direwolves usually rely on Fantix, rely on Chippies, like you said, to play those big carry top laners, but by picking up the Cho'Gath, they're getting so much more power to King. I really like how Cho'Gath kind of does the same thing that Cassiopeia does for AD carries, and that it makes it really hard to dive onto the back of them, because he has, the Vorpal Spikes, the big silence, the rupture. If Cho is standing next to that Caitlyn, you suddenly don't want to go back there.
Well, Fantix has picked up his Trinity Force as well as his Sorcerer's Shoes, so he's ready. Got all of that extra movement speed and, of course, the extra power that the Trinity Force does give you. And Corki, one of my favorite champions when you want to talk about power spikes, because every single item you pick up gives you a power spike.
And then he just hyper scales into late game.
Yeah, exactly. It's like power spike, power spike, power spike, hyper carry. Oh yeah, it feels
he
very,
can
very
survive most mid lane matchups due to his itemization and just natural protectiveness. Has huge damage in the mid game and then hyper scales into late game.
Like how you're talking about surviving the mid lane as the mid lane gets completely obliterated by C9. Looking to grab a very relevant dragon here as the mountain is going to go down, most likely uncontested, as Direwolves have no interest in running into C9 at this point in the game.
And this is one of the things that I really liked about C9 when I was, watching their VODs and setting up for Worlds. I actually think that their setup is really consistent and quite clever. They use the Rift Herald in the mid lane, they take down the tower, they get control there, and then easily rotate into the mountain. And it seems pretty simple, but a lot of teams will just fumble that simple setup. It's the execution part that Cloud9, not quite finding the team fight at the right moment, or maybe fumbling the team fight mechanics a little bit, someone out of position slightly, that's where they start to falter. But so far, it's been a very clean play-in beginning for them.
Yeah, and you can see bottom side where they set up for that dragon. Now going to have to replace some of that vision, hitting about the 16-minute mark. In 4 minutes' time, we'll need to get ready for that Baron dance, and I feel like C9 probably will feel relatively comfortable going for that as soon as possible.
Yep, taking their time to push down bottom while they can still play down there. As the The 1-3-1 has begun for Direwolves, but not necessarily to their advantage on the bottom side.
Yeah, Fantix did have the cull cash in though, Frosco. This is
the big sell?
This is important to mention because, you know, it's 5,000 gold lead, things not looking great for Direwolves, but at least Fantix is theoretically 1-1-0. That is good news. Only 3 CS behind. Oh, brilliant.
I'm online, boys. Let's go. I've got the package.
Yeah, can you tell that I'm a Fantix fan? Have been quite some time.
Well, that's fair. I mean, Fantix has a huge reputation in Oceania, formerly known as Perfection. And hold on, though. King, you're in trouble.
Oh, that heal movement speed, that's going to get him out of the way. Jensen's still hunting him down, but he's going to realize that it's not worth it. They're just going to continue pushing up the mid lane, and they've zoned everyone away.
Yeah, exactly. Cloud9 still have inside track on this mid lane, and Direwolves are scrambling to get behind their tower. They're going to lose this for free.
Are they? I feel like Direwolves are just sort of moseying on towards the tower. It didn't look like very much of a scramble at all. As Impact is just going to pick up this wave that Fantix was shoving into the turret, and honestly, it's just not necessarily working out for the Direwolves. And we said that this could definitely be a problem. If they fall behind, they don't have that pressure to play with. And we haven't seen the Direwolves in this position for a very, very long time. They're used to pushing up their waves and providing space for Schönfire. And now it's about triaging your lanes and getting Schönfire somewhere to farm, while King and Destiny are the ones that have the lead, which is the complete opposite to how things are supposed to work for this team.
The Direwolves are used to being proactive. They're used to setting their pace. They're used to saying, this is where we're going to fight and this is how we're going to sculpt the map. When they have to be reactive, they virtually have very little experience domestically playing that. And again, when they're behind at 15 minutes, they've only been behind 9 times out of 29 games. They do not have experience playing from behind.
Yeah, certainly not good. Whereas you look over the other side, C9, often when they're making proactive plays, that's where things go wrong. However, them in a reactionary style, when they're playing calm and collected, just waiting for someone to make a mistake moving towards them, they have looked brilliant. It worked fantastically well in the qualifier against CLG, and now they're able to do it to no end against the Direwolves. And it's just, the stylistic mismatch is what I feel is a real problem here. Even though in this game they were making proactive moves and things were working out for them, it's still, whenever Direwolves go for anything, it just doesn't necessarily work because C9 know what to do in each situation.
And they know exactly where they need to be, which is pushing in this inner top lane tower. Now, while this is happening, simultaneously, Jensen is hard shoving mid lane. So it's just about a game of patience as Cloud9 are chipping away on all of the structures on the map.
Yeah, and stealing away the jungle over and over again. You can see 130 against 83. And I know jungle camps is a bit of a confusing one because there could be Krugs and Raptors mixed up in there, but 50 CS in the lead for the Nidalee is pretty bad.
But take a look
for Schönfire fans.
Your map right now, because the Baron is spawning in 27 seconds. Cloud9 are simply creating space to get all of these control wards and all of this vision placed in Direwolves jungle. So their tactic is clear. They'll take the tower for free. They've just simply overwhelmed Direwolves there, but the real prize is the Baron. And again, like I said, with the setup that Cloud9 do, it's actually really impressive. You know, let me see the LPL. We don't buy a lot of wards. Cloud9 buys a ton of wards.
Well, Baron is going to be spawning in 1 second. There he is, popping up with his cool new World's clothes.
I actually really like the World's Baron.
I'm a big fan. But look at all of the vision that C9 have. They are so prepared to head towards this. They're not actually going to go towards it right now. Direwolves have themselves in position, but C9 may as well farm them a little bit more before heading towards the big purple worm.
They're actually waiting on Impact, so that's the big guy that you need to be paying attention to. As soon as he gets that pressured to where the Direwolves need to respond, they're put in this position where we either try to jump on the 4 members that are out of position, like Sneaky.
Oh god, Destiny. Didn't necessarily want to take that fight in the end, as Impact is going to teleport forward. Good Howling Gale's actually is going to knock him up. It was actually a rupture. He's just going to get eaten. Jensen comes down. They're going to trade 1-for-1 as Contracts grabs himself yet another kill. The Justice Punch is good onto Fantix. Valkyrie's himself out of the way, so he's going to be relatively safe. As Chippies is launching forward, he's actually quite tanky now. As King, that was a little bit over-aggressive. Flashes out. He's going to be fine for the moment, but he probably didn't need to use his summoner just there, and it's a 1-for-1 in the end. And probably something the Direwolves are going to be okay with, but man, that was an odd one, King.
That was a bit aggressive. Your boy King, what, nets forward, flashes back out. I didn't want to be here, and he doesn't want to be there.
Nope, certainly doesn't. Not going to get hunted just yet, so Contracts looking for this last skip is going to miss it. King wants to turn this one around. Chippies is a very, very big Jurassic Cho'Gath right there.
But there, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Cloud9, they had that jungle lit up like a Christmas tree.
Oh, God.
That hurt. They could see everything and anything, and you see the idea. The idea is 100% correct. They've got Impact, he's grabbing the wave, he's like, just hold up, guys, wait a little bit, we've got the correct vision control, I'm gonna pressure bottom, and then we're gonna make our move. But it's just slightly out of position and just a slight missed execution where they lose a lot of that momentum, that time and that gold of, you know, buying that vision, placing it down, setting up the Baron. And where Cloud9 had been really ramping up the tempo of the game, they need to take a step back and kind of catch their breath. They wasted their teleport summoner, so it's much harder to make that cross-map play. So Direwolves, with their bold move over the wall here on the blast cone from Surenfire, bought themselves probably about 5 minutes more to continue to farm and try to get a foot back into this game.
Now we've got to try and work out what King was trying to do here. That is the most important.
I think he just saw greatness in his eyes and he decided to go for it. As coming into this fight, you know, Impact, the idea was correct. You teleport to the other side, but frankly his team was just a little bit spread out away from him, and here's the flash. Excuse me, the net. Now here's the flash. Taunt right on top of him, needs to get away from the Galio. Thank God Chippy's caught the Falcon punch there, so Jensen couldn't follow up, and then it's just a healthy disengage for Cloud9.
I'm sure someone can tell us why he did that, but I personally have not figured it out just yet.
I always say that it's better to have bloodlust in you because that's harder to train into players. Like, you want the player with the killer mentality, and then you just try to rein that in.
Well, one thing I do want to point out is that Direwolves have a lot of control wins. One was just put down, but they've got 3 more in the inventory. I'm proud of you boys. That's what we need. We need the visions. 3,000 gold behind those, so we're not going to use that vision to be aggressive as Surenfire is going to do exactly that. Contract's going down very, very low as there's the heroic entrance and Impact. Massive cataclysm damage. Shern's going to die as well. Destiny, I believe, died incidentally as they were trying to kill everyone else. And this should definitely spell Baron. Shern dead, no smite. And C9 just looking to put the final nail in the coffin of what has been a very difficult game for the Direwolves.
At Cloud9, they took their breath. They said, just run it back. We don't have the teleport, so this time Impact will play with us. They find their heart engaged, just blow them up with the gold lead. 10K now in their favor that they've accumulated this game, and walk through with a free Baron.
Yeah, 5 turrets now to 1 as well. They've got the pressure exactly where they need it. And this is with the low-range AD carry in Sneaky versus King on the Caitlyn, plus having a Corki there as well. I mean, when you think about pushing turrets, you think that the Direwolves have the composition that can do it, but with all of the control that Contracts has provided to this team, this Nidalee has been everywhere and honestly stifled the Direwolves from the word go in this match.
And this is exactly what Cloud9 fans want. They don't want it to just be the Jensen show. We know and we have expectations for him. We know he can reach that greatness. It's the rest of the team now. They have the same thing in them. We've seen it from Sneaky going Miracle Mode. We know Impact can be a world champion. They just need to return to that form.
Well, Arctic Assault is going to go wide as Smoothie takes a lot of damage here, but Impact going to get himself right in. Knocks up Chippies, but not exactly the right champion that he wants to be going for. As Surenfire, that Arctic Assault was an odd one, as Sneaky's going to be able to pick up that kill. And yes, it was a decent Glacial Prison, but there was no follow-up. There was nothing else, and then he decided to put his face into it once again. Just not necessarily working here in the Direwolves. I mean, I can understand this because you have to try and make plays. You have to try and do something. The idea isn't to lose slowly, ever. You've still got to try and make plays because you're only going to win based on surprise at this stage. And even that is going to be extraordinarily hard.
Now, he did zone off a lot of members for Cloud9, but it's about who they're making the plays around. And frankly, Fantix is really the only guy doing necessary damage at this point because of how far ahead of the clock Cloud9 are, especially on their tanky members. Even with the Static Shiv as well as the Infinity Edge, King is still really reliant on needing that armor penetration before he's doing any damage really in these team fights.
Oh dear.
Taking another look at this one, it's the big Cataclysm, the Wombo combo from Impact that really sets everything up, as well as the fact that the teleport never comes in. So this is a 4v5 in favor of Cloud9.
Yeah, and the Cataclysm in the perfect position there as well. Direwolves, 3 men struck by it, having to try and spread as much as they could, but certainly Destiny not getting out of the way of that one. We have a couple of flashes now up for the bottom lane here for the Direwolves, so can at least get themselves out, but it's just looking so scary. And that's a 12,000 gold lead, and this has been a statement day for Cloud9. We heard them say we shouldn't be in this tournament. We should be heading straight to the group stage to start things off. And honestly, I'm becoming a believer. I thought that maybe it was a little bit overconfident. Maybe that could bite them here, but C9 have said absolutely no. We said it for a reason, and it's certainly looking like that. Star Wolves' last-ditch defense. They haven't lost base turrets just yet. It's feeling like only moments before that happens. Baron ticking down slowly.
And again, all eyes really have to be on Surenfire as the primary engage tool. He needs to hit the perfect ult, and it needs to be followed up by the perfect Fantix damage if Direwolves want to stand a chance here. Otherwise, it's just going to be a slow, suffocating crawl for Cloud9.
Yeah, and King, he's just taking so much damage. Phenomenal taunt comes down for Jensen, who's really playing this Galio like a man who's been playing it all split, and he certainly hasn't. Contract's going to finish off Surenfire. And C9, it's like this mid-jungle duo are always going to have someone who gets all the kills, and this time it's going to be Contracts with Jensen just setting them all up for him. The Nexus turrets are now going to be falling down as C9 27.5 minutes into this game, looking to put the final nail in day one. And certainly the statements have been made. Direwolves, they were talking the talk, but the walk was more like a limp today. We'll see whether day two is going to be better or whether their game to finish out the night is going to be better as well, because that wasn't enough. And C9 look so dominant in this group.
They look like the strongest team in play-in so far. Lion definitely up there as contenders, also looking good in form, but nothing to the dominance that Cloud9 have
I think WE did pretty well as well.
crashed on for this tournament. I'll hold off on that one.
Yeah, I know. Just all the faith in China is difficult to get out, but certainly faith in North America is something that you can definitely have, because Cloud9 made that one look incredibly easy. They made their last one look easy as well, and this one is feeling exactly the same way.
And now it's a question of how this will impact the Direwolves if they're able to bounce back from this. They do have one more game. This was both of Cloud9's games for the day, so they do start 2-0. But Direwolves are looking down the barrel of Brazil later on. And, you know, Surenfire just got, frankly, outclassed on every level by Contracts.
Yeah.
And he's kind of the rock or the core of that team.
Yeah, it's really, really dangerous. However, Team 1 is going to be a very different beast, and if you compare the two Cloud9 games in their group, you could imagine that both of them looked about the same level of dominance, if perhaps the second one feeling a little bit faster. However, I mean, how this composition from the Direwolves was put together is something that, if it falls behind, it's going to utterly fail, you know? Like, this is how the Direwolves generally play. It's fast and loose, it's all in, and this time they went all in and they lost. And sometimes these things happen. Hopefully, they can pick themselves back up, and then when they face Team 1 at the end of the day, things will be better.
It is, frankly, a very different look from the Direwolves. Like you said, normally we see Chippies on more of those carry-oriented champions, so maybe trying to learn things from their Korean boot camp, maybe trying to crack or absorb Cloud9. Again, it's usually about their strong lane phases, so really just torn apart by Cloud9.
Yeah, that was a dangerous one. But to get their thoughts on Cloud9's 2-0 day, let's send it over to Dracos and the boys.
And the boys?
Thank you, Atlas. Yeah, I'm Dracos. These are the boys. We're here to talk a little bit about Cloud9, and we're going to start off by talking a little bit about the draft and the team composition that Cloud9 brought.
Yeah, the reason this is such a big deal is because this is totally different from anything we're used to seeing out of C9. Jensen is almost always on a late game carry. This time takes the Galio. They end up flexing that away from Impact, who you almost always assume is taking it, and it shows a very different team comp overall out of them.
And that's the big thing here for me. Two things here. First one is Jensen on the Galio. Yes, he can play it. He's a pro player who cares about Worlds. He's going to learn the damn champion.
You sound like someone has personally come up to you and
I'm
been
just
like,
saying,
he'll never play Galio.
A lot of the knocks against Jensen have been the one-dimensional style of his play, but Cloud9 rely on him because he's so damn good and dominant in lane.
Yeah, it's often a criticism not only of him, but as the team as a whole, is that they can't win if Jensen is not on X champions. And Galio was one of those champions that you just said they can't play because they need him to hard carry. This is something that is very promising moving forward.
Yeah, and the second thing that I was talking about is because of that, moving forward, best of one format, you don't really have to show these things against these teams if you think you're going to make the best of fives, if you're going to make the group stages. But Cloud9 are using this to kind of showcase, hey, we can play this Galio mid, we can play it top, and that you have to actually care about this because they're pretty good at it now.
And the other interesting thing is the fact that with the Nidalee Flex being the last pick that they took, it does kind of put Surenfire on the back foot. Someone who wants to be the aggressor in a lot of these matchups now has to deal with a Nidalee, this big threat in the jungle.
Yeah, and Contracts has kind of stepped up as that one other person to really help out and get that early game going besides Jensen. He's been there to help camp mid, but he's also showing a diversification play style, because we were talking about it after Cloud9 won that first game, is, hey, typical Cloud9, go mid. Doesn't matter what they play in mid, it's going to end up being the same type of story here.
And that's the fantastic performance we expect from Contract. Here's that reel of Contracts finding his prey for our Acer Predator replay. And we can just see this
See
man
what you did there.
on a mission. Luckily, you didn't have to see my face.
Yeah, it was good though. Yeah, there's a huge influence in the early game. Met up with Jensen once again to kind of be the catalyst for the early game, but then also transitioning, meeting up with Impact a lot. And that's the other kind of thing that happened with this comp as well, is Impact on the aggressor with that, you know, Jarvan pick that we tend to not see out of him that much.
And I really like the way they set up the top side of their map. You have picks that work really well together in the Jarvan and the Galio. Contracts coming into the mid lane to gank. And the thing about LeBlanc that always felt good to me on Jensen was gank assist for Contracts to come in. The chain lands, Contracts gets to come in. This time, yeah, you don't have the damage, but the Nidalee does.
Yeah, speaking of damage, Nidalee, most damage in the entire game, and this is very skill shot dependent, depends on you kind of snowballing the early parts of the game. And I have to say that I believe it was pretty pivotal that he did that early, because we saw the turret race where it almost went Direwolves first gold from that first turret. But because he ganked mid and ganked top and got them going, it allowed them to kind of circumvent the issues that they were having bottom in that matchup.
I think that's a big thing to point out, was that there was some good stuff going for Direwolves here. Their bot lane took a very aggressive matchup in Caitlyn. Karma basically needs to win lane, and they executed on that.
And the interesting thing, too, is that's not normally the lane we expect to see step up in these contacts. They got a good lane matchup. They abused the power of the Caitlyn and worked out well for them. The surprise for me was kind of Fantix falling so low in the mid lane. We praise Contracts. We praise Jensen. They did play very well to set that up, but Fantix has been praised as this like prodigy mid laner in the context of OS, and I think we need to see him play a little bit more consistently if we want, if Direwolves rather, want to find a win.
Yeah, I kind of don't blame a lot of the teams that are going up against Cloud9 for the first time here, because you're seeing like the Corki take Cull. This is going to be a non-interactive lane. I'll poke him out. That's fine. You don't always expect the jungler to come to that mid lane Galio lane. That feels like one that you really do have to go for those all-ins to make it work. And I felt like he made the assumption that it was going to be the side lanes. It was going to be the Cho'Gath that's so easy to dive. But it was the mid.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is it's tough to know that that's the strategy that's going to be coming for you. And that's why the best of one stage is so punishing, because it's like, now I know how aggressive C9 will play around mid lane. It's like, great, well, you got one more chance to try and show that you adapted to that.
Well, it's good that you bring that up, because if we take a step back, Cloud9 now 2-0 in the context of their group, very much on the road to securing themselves that first seed if they can't keep this level of performance up. So if you're going up against Cloud9, do you just have to try to out mid jungle them, because that looks like it's going to remain the strategy?
I personally prefer when you just try and let Jensen be Jensen. Hopefully he gets a 10 CS lead, but you limit it there. Like he will probably win laning phase, but I don't think you need to do what One did, where they draft the Lucian to try and counter him. I just think what Direwolves did here, if you take a Corki and you go even-ish, that's what you should try and do, but you just got to be ready for that assistant that always comes in from the rest of Cloud9.
Yeah, I do think that they had step one down for Direwolves, which was draft at least one big winning lane for yourself in the bottom side. I just want to see Surenfire play more to that lane, maybe go for some potential dives on the flashless Janna, and then be able to swap that lane to top and kind of just move the map around and avoid bad matchups.
When you look at that opportunity, is that something that he can do relatively risk-free? Because for me, it feels like maybe he has to go mid to stop this mid lane from collapsing anymore.
What Contracts is doing is going into the jungle with the aggressive Nidalee to track him.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's hard. I mean, Corki versus Galio will not snowball horribly out of control. The biggest problem is the spillover effect when the Galio starts getting easier and easier roams off. But if Contracts didn't have such an explosive early game and the bot lane was going in their favor, they don't lose that top turret, then they swap their bot to the top side like you were saying. It very easily could have looked a lot better for Direwolves.
Some options for Direwolves to come back. We'll have to see how they adjust. Cloud9 end the day at the top of their group. We're going to see if Team WE can do the same in Group A. When we return, they're going to face Gambit Esports for our 5th game of the day. Do not go anywhere. We're going to be right back.
And he's going to get taunted up. Spear lands from Contracts, jumps forward. There's the flash to follow for the first blood.
Big wave
Cataclysm. Yeah, Impact going aggressive onto Chippies. He actually can't get out of here. Thankfully, not a lot of damage as the spear is going to land. That's going to finish him off. Contract's going down very, very low as there's the heroic entrance. And Impact, massive Cataclysm damage. Shern's going to die as well. C9, 27.5 minutes into this game. Looking to put the final nail in day one. And C9 look so dominant in this group.